Okay, let's unpack this. For a lot of us, especially if you're, involved in tech or your job has tasks that feel a bit routine,
Yeah,
there's this nagging, maybe even a bit scary question. Is AI coming for my job?
it is. It's a really valid anxiety right now.
Absolutely.
Every significant technological shift, well, it brings disruption. And that fear, of being made redundant or
Mm.
left behind, that's a very human response.
Right. And that's exactly why we're doing this deep dive today. We're taking a step back, looking at this stack of sources you shared, articles, historical research, economic analyses,
Hmm?
to see if this fear is actually, well, justified by history, or if technological revolutions like the one AI seems to be driving follow a different, perhaps more hopeful path.
Yeah, our mission here is really to pull out the core insights from all this material, just to give you that bigger picture.
Okay.
What's fascinating, and the sources really bear this out, is that while these shifts are, yes, undeniably disruptive in the short term,
Right.
historically, they've consistently led to immense gains, greater productivity, entirely new types of jobs, and ultimately, significantly higher living standards in the long run.
So the big question we're tackling, based on everything in front of us, is can we expect AI to follow that historical pattern?
That's the core of it.
Let's dive into the past first, then see what these sources reveal.
Looking back is crucial because honestly, the anxieties we feel about AI today, they echo fears from previous waves of change. The sources point to some really clear parallels.
Absolutely. Think about the Industrial Revolution, 18th, 19th centuries.
Right.
The image that often comes to mind is the Luddites, right? Those skilled textile workers who saw mechanization, the new power looms as a direct threat.
And they weren't entirely wrong in the immediate sense. Machines did displace jobs like hand weaving. It caused real pain for specific groups.
Yeah, painful disruption.
But what the sources emphasize is the immense increase in output that followed. The
Right.
efficiency of machines just dramatically boosted textile production.
And new industries popped up around them.
Exactly. New industries, factories sprang up, and textiles, almost paradoxically, became the dominant employer of the era.
Okay, get this. Here's where it gets really interesting and maybe a bit counterintuitive.
Mhm.
Because machine production made cloth so much cheaper, demand just exploded.
Right. People who couldn't afford it before now could.
Precisely. And this surge in demand meant textile mills actually needed more workers overall to keep up, even though each worker was way more productive because of the machines.
And the long-term impact, according to the research here, was transformative. This period is where sustained economic growth really kicks off.
Like British real income's purchasing power roughly doubled between 1760 and 1860.
Yeah, and look closer. Real wages for blue-collar workers in England doubled rapidly just in the few decades after 1819. That's fast.
And you see it in everyday life too. Things we think are basic now, like sugar and tea.
The luxuries back then.
Exactly. Once expensive luxuries only for the rich became commonplace for the working class by the late 1800s. Why? Mass production and global trade made them affordable.
That's a tangible sign right there of mass living standards rising because of technological efficiency.
So, the crucial takeaway from the Industrial Revolution section of these sources is this. Yes, specific jobs vanished or changed drastically.
Hand weaving faded, factory jobs emerged.
Right. But the overall outcome, a significant rise in total employment, income, and living standards. It was a transformation, not just destruction.
Okay, fast forward, early 20th century, another massive wave. Electrification and the rise of mass production. Assembly lines.
The car industry is the perfect case study here, right? It's in the sources.
Absolutely. Henry Ford's assembly line, famous for boosting output per worker. The sources cite that Model T production per worker tripled between 1909 and 1915.
Tripled from 8 cars a year per worker to 21.
Yeah, and Ford didn't just keep the profits, he slashed the price of the Model T. Over 50% drop, from $950 down to $440.
What would happen?
Cars became affordable for way more people. Demand exploded, far outpacing the productivity gains per worker.
So employment in the auto industry actually surged. It didn't shrink.
Exactly, it surged.
In that exact pattern, tech lowers costs, makes stuff accessible, stimulates demand, creates new jobs to meet it. That played out across the economy, didn't it?
Widely. Electrification didn't just make factories more productive, it enabled entirely new industries, electrical appliances, modern retail,
Right.
and even as manufacturing automated, overall employment still grew. Why? Because higher incomes fueled demand for other goods, other services, creating all these auxiliary industries.
Sure, old jobs disappeared, horse carriage drivers, lamplighters.
Yeah, those faded. But new ones emerged. Mechanics, electricians, repair services, delivery drivers, jobs directly enabled by the new tech and the industries it created.
So the core insight from that era, based on these sources, is clear. Productivity gains led to lower costs, higher demand, and ultimately big job growth, especially in new or expanding sectors.
Which brings us closer to home, to the revolution many of us lived through, computing and digital. Late 20th, early 21st century.
Oh, yeah. And again, the fear was palpable.
Totally, you heard it everywhere. Computers are going to eliminate clerks, secretaries, typists, switchboard operators.
Well, some of those job categories did decline or disappear as computers took over.
They did. But look at the data in these sources. The reality is that entirely new job categories emerged on a massive scale, far offsetting those losses.
We're talking software developers, IT support, data analysts, web designers.
Roles that barely existed just a few decades before.
And the numbers are pretty stark. The introduction of the PC and the internet in the US. Some analyses estimate it created a net gain of about 15.8 million jobs over a few decades.
That's huge. Roughly 10% of the current U.S. labor force. Over 19 million new jobs generated, far more than the direct losses.
It's striking. Some sources estimate about 60% of U.S. jobs in 2018 were in occupations that didn't even exist back in 1940.
Think about corporate programmers. A handful then, millions by the 2000s.
And this wasn't just a Western thing. The sources highlight India's IT services boom from the 90s onward.
Right. That wasn't just shifting existing jobs, it created millions of new jobs in software, BPO, IT services, made India a global hub.
So the key takeaway from the computing era seems to be that it drastically changed the mix of jobs, created vast new fields.
And showed that tech, even as it automates, leads to more jobs overall, not lasting mass unemployment.
Right. The data consistently shows productivity and total employment rising together most years since, like, 1960 in the U.S. and elsewhere.
Yeah, directly counters that old idea of a fixed amount of work, the lump of labor fallacy. The economic pie grows.
Okay, so after diving into these historical waves, industrial, electrification, computing, it really seems like there are some powerful recurring patterns the sources are highlighting.
Absolutely. The first, and maybe the most surprising given the common fear, is that consistent link between productivity and employment.
Yeah, it feels counterintuitive. More efficiency means fewer workers, right?
That's the gut reaction. But the evidence is overwhelming. Increases in productivity usually go hand in hand with increases in total employment.
The sources point to U.S. data since 1960. Something like productivity and employment both rising in nearly 80% of years.
Around 79%, yeah. And crucially, there are virtually no long periods where productivity grew significantly while overall employment didn't.
So why? What's the mechanism?
It comes down to this. Higher efficiency lowers production costs. Lower costs often mean lower prices. Lower prices mean people buy more. Demand goes up, often dramatically.
So businesses then need to hire more workers overall to meet that much higher demand.
Exactly. The whole economic pie gets much, much larger. It's not about doing the same work with fewer people. It's about doing massively more total output, needing a larger total workforce, because tech made it cheaper and more accessible.
Okay, that makes sense. And that leads us to the second pattern. Sector shifts. Technology doesn't kill work, it just moves it around.
Right. The classic example you see it everywhere in economics is U.S. agriculture.
Yeah, 1900, like 40% of the workforce on farms.
Roughly. By 2000, under 2%. Thanks to tractors, fertilizers, all that tech.
But those millions didn't just disappear.
No, they shifted. First into manufacturing, then overwhelmingly into services and the knowledge economy. And total U.S. employment grew dramatically throughout that whole period. Remember that 60% stat? Jobs in 2018 that didn't exist in 1940.
So it's a constant evolution of where people work and what they do.
Precisely. Manufacturing dominated the mid-20th century. Services and info jobs dominate now. Think ATMs. Again, the fear was job losses for tellers.
But banks opened more branches because they were cheaper, and tellers shifted roles.
Yep. Customer service, sales, advisory roles. PCs eliminated typists but created millions of jobs in IT, software, data.
So the work changes form, but the need for human effort in a growing economy moves. It doesn't vanish.
Right, which connects to the third big pattern, how productivity growth drives higher output, higher income, and ultimately abundance.
Okay, explain that link.
Well, when tech makes things way cheaper and easier to produce, society as a whole gets wealthier. People have more disposable income and time because basic goods take less effort or money.
And they spend that freed up cash on other stuff.
Exactly. New goods, new services, experiences. That spending creates demand, which fuels new industries and jobs in those new areas.
Like the Ford Model T again. Doubled output per worker, half the price. Result, huge growth in auto jobs, not fewer.
Or look at lighting. Over centuries, it got exponentially cheaper per unit of light. Did people just use less? No.
No, we lit up everything, all the time.
Right. The lighting industry didn't shrink. It provided vastly more illumination and still employed people.
And computing costs plummeted Moore's law. We didn't stop using computers.
We embedded them everywhere.
Hmm.
Cars, phones, appliances created the huge IT workforce we have today.
So global GDP per capita shooting up after the Industrial Revolution shows this. More stuff per person means more jobs making and supporting that stuff.
That's the story the data tells. More output, more services, more jobs in new areas.
Which leads to another powerful trend this productivity enables. Luxuries becoming abundant. That feels like a core part of technological progress.
It absolutely is. Technology systematically makes previously expensive or inaccessible things affordable for the masses, raises living standards, fuels mass markets, requires mass workforces.
Like textiles, costly, handmade, cheap, mass-produced commodity.
Sugar exotic, luxury sounding item, sweetened tea for the working class in the 1800s.
Cars, air travel from toys for the rich to routine transport for millions, creating huge industries around them.
Electronics, communication early phones were rare novelties. Now billions carry supercomputers in their pockets. Smartphones were unimaginable to most 30 years ago.
And the cost of computing, data storage, communication has fallen faster than almost anything.
Look at India's mobile data story. Jio drastically lowered prices, brought internet to hundreds of millions. That didn't just improve communication.
It enabled totally new jobs, right? Gig economy, online retail, local content creation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Every time tech makes something cheap and abundant, clothing, sugar, cars, mobile data, it lifts living standards and fuels mass markets needing new job sectors.
In AI, the sources suggest it can continue this trend, but maybe more for services.
That's the potential. By lowering the cost of complex tasks, AI could make things like personalized education or high-level medical diagnosis affordable enough for everyone, like cell phones made communication universal.
So turn today's costly services into tomorrow's routine. AI-assisted utilities, creating more abundance and new jobs around AI support and oversight.
That's the optimistic vision grounded in these historical patterns. This potential for huge productivity gains, especially knowledge work, brings up a really interesting, maybe even provocative idea the sources explore.
Which is?
Could AI actually lead us towards a future where people work significantly fewer hours?
Now that's fascinating. We've seen jobs change, new jobs appear.
Well,
But the total time spent working, has that changed historically?
dramatically. In industrialized countries, yes. Look at the 19th century. 60, 70 hours a week was normal. Over the last 150 years, that's fallen significantly, down to around 30 hours a week in parts of Western Europe today.
30.
Yeah. Germany, for example, the sources mentioned workers there, went from about 3,000 hours a year in the late 19th century to under 1,500 today. That's cutting work time by more than half.
That's massive. And not just because people got lazy.
Not at all. It was complex. Rising productivity meant you could earn the same or more in less time. Labor movements pushed for shorter hours. And crucially, as societies got richer, people collectively chose to take some gains as leisure, not just more stuff.
It reminds me of Keynes, John Maynard Keynes, predicting back in 1930.
The 15-hour work week.
Yeah. By 2030, he thought wealth and productivity would be so high, we'd only need to work 15 hours.
Right. And while we're way richer now, the 15-hour week isn't quite here yet, partly because we also chose more consumption. But the underlying trend, shorter hours as productivity rises, that persists.
And AI, especially generative AI, looks set to deliver another big productivity jump, maybe particularly in white-collar knowledge work this time.
Exactly. There's an analysis focused on India, cited in the sources. It estimated maybe 24% of tasks could be fully automated by AI, another 42% significantly augmented.
Okay, what does that translate to?
It suggests that for the average knowledge worker, AI could potentially free up something like 8 to 10 hours per week.
8 to 10 hours. That's like getting an extra day a week back just through AI efficiency.
Potentially. The sources also mention huge jumps in specific areas. Call centers may be over 80% efficiency gains. Software development tasks may be 60% faster with AI help.
So if AI lets someone do 5 days work in 4, we face a choice.
We do. Society can choose. Use that efficiency to produce way more output, or work significantly less for the same output, or likely some mix. History suggests we usually mix it.
The optimistic scenario, then, based on history, is that AI could finally enable that Keynesian future. Basic needs met easily, people choose to work less, maybe 20 hours.
And redirect time to creativity, community, learning, leisure.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's the hopeful vision these sources point towards.
So AI automates the tedious stuff, routine reports, boilerplate code, sorting data.
Freeing humans for uniquely human tasks. Overseeing AI, generating novel ideas, complex problem-solving, strategy, interpersonal roles, art.
The goal isn't no work, it's less drudgery. Let the robots do the boring stuff.
Exactly. Now, getting to a widespread 20-hour week isn't automatic. It needs societal choices. How are AI gains distributed?
Historically, gains led to both higher wages and shorter hours.
Right. The sources suggest the future could see a similar mix. Plus, cultural shifts might matter. Younger generations value work-life balance more. We see 4-day-week experiments. AI could make those mainstream.
AI could also boost creative entrepreneurship. Like one person plus AI becomes a super productive team.
Potentially. Enabling niche businesses, maybe with fewer hours overall, more time for personal projects.
And more free time doesn't mean less ambition.
No, great inventions often come from leisure. More free time can spur creativity, learning, community work. Think about the 20th century shorter hours coincided with flourishing arts and education.
So a 20-hour week isn't here tomorrow, but AI makes it plausible in the coming decades.
The historical logic holds. Boost productivity, less work needed for same output. Society can choose shorter wets and still prosper. AI is already starting to free up hours. The hope is that accelerates.
This brings us neatly to India, which the sources really highlight as being uniquely positioned for this AI wave.
Yeah, huge opportunity there. Massive talent pool, growing digital economy.
That foundation from the computing revolution is key, right? The IT and engineering workforce.
It's remarkable. Over 5.4 million in IT BPM, 1.5 million engineering grads yearly, over 4 million developers. That's the bedrock for leveraging AI.
And this talent can be directed towards AI fields, machine learning, data science.
Absolutely. The demand is projected to be huge. India might need over 1 million AI-skilled professionals soon. That large, young, digital native workforce is a major advantage.
But the key is reskilling and upskilling.
Essential. Integrating AI into education, mid-career training. Initiatives like Skill India are crucial steps mentioned in the sources.
And AI as a productivity booster within India, especially in sectors lagging behind.
Big potential there. Agriculture employs 42% but only 16% of GDP. AI tools could boost yields, free up labor.
Predictive analytics, precision farming.
Exactly. Manufacturing. AI optimizes supply chains, maintenance. Services India's backbone. Automate routine BPO, move workers up the value chain to AI-driven services.
Like AI customer support, fintech, telemedicine for global markets.
Precisely.
The economic impact numbers in the sources are pretty eye-popping. NASCOM left talking $500 billion to GDP by 2025.
And EY projecting generative AI alone adding $440 billion by 2030.
That's a huge chunk of GDP increase.
The cumulative impact by 2030 could be $1.2 to $1.5 trillion added, potentially lifting annual GDP growth by about 1 percentage point. These numbers suggest AI's impact could rival or exceed the IT boom for India.
Okay, but let's tackle the flip side, job displacement fears, especially in IT, with routine coding or support tasks potentially automated.
It's a valid concern. Some displacement is likely in lower skill roles. But India's recent history, like with BPO automation, shows a pattern. Companies often retrain workers for higher skills, expand into new areas.
And new AI jobs are already emerging in India.
Yeah, definitely. AI model trainers, data annotators, ethics specialists, solution architects, they're in demand. Indian IT firms are investing heavily in AI practices, retraining staff.
So India could become a global AI services hub, creating high-value jobs.
That's the goal. Plus, the startup scene is vibrant AI in health, education, local language tools, creating R&D, product, sales jobs. PwC estimated maybe 9 million net new jobs by 2035 due to AI.
Wow, net new.
Yeah, ranging from core AI dev to drone services, AI healthcare outreach, managing smart infrastructure.
And beyond jobs and GDP, if AI boosts growth like this, it could directly improve living standards.
Absolutely. Higher incomes mean a bigger middle class. Crucially, AI can make essential services more accessible and affordable.
Like AI diagnostics expanding healthcare access where doctors are scarce.
or personalized AI tutors, bringing quality education to remote areas cheaply.
It's like leveraging AI to provide things previously out of reach, like mobile phones did for communication.
Exactly.
Yeah.
India's AI for All initiative focuses on that, using AI in key sectors for broad social benefit and scale.
So the result to be better living standards across the board, cheaper food, better healthcare, education.
That's the potential upside. And India aims to lead in AI development, not just adopt it.
Using its English-speaking tech base, IT legacy.
To develop global solutions, it's already an R&D hub. The government's India AI initiative, Centers of Excellence, they signal that ambition. AI could be India's next big leap after IT.
Investing in research, partnerships. Fostering homegrown AI for India's specific needs.
Like for small farms, diverse languages, which can then be exported. India's diverse data is an advantage for training AI. And the need for human oversight globally. India can provide that human capital at scale. High-skill work, moving up the value chain.
Huge potential, but managing the transition is key. How do you handle workers whose tasks get automated?
Careful planning, as the sources note. Focused reskilling, retraining a call center agent to monitor AI or use AI tools for sales. Strengthening education STEM, AI literacy, problem-solving, creativity, and clear policies for responsible AI, data privacy, security.
So summarizing for India, huge gains possible. Talent, scale, needs potential growth engine like IT was, aiming for that 5T, $10 economy goal.
And a higher quality of life. Working less, earning more time for innovation, personal goals. The historical parallels suggest it's attainable, maybe even faster now.
Okay, let's bring it all together then. Looking back, Industrial Revolution, electrification, computing, the overwhelming story from these sources is pretty clear, isn't it?
Yeah, technology causes short-term disruption, anxiety, but consistently leads to more prosperity, new kinds of jobs, and higher living standards long-term.
Jobs change, sectors shift, but productivity fuels expansion and luxuries become accessible.
And AI seems to be the next chapter in that long story.
It will automate tasks, including some knowledge work, but the efficiency gains, the innovation potential, it's vast.
History suggests it will augment us, open new industries we can barely imagine, create wealth.
And those optimistic possibilities are real. Higher incomes, shorter work hours, more creative work as AI handles the mundane.
And for India, specifically, this remarkable chance to leverage its strengths, boost growth, improve life for millions.
So that initial fear, AI will take my job, developer, or otherwise it's not the full picture, is it?
Based on centuries of precedent, no. Like the loom, the tractor, the PC, AI can free people from repetitive tasks for higher value work, innovation, more leisure.
The economy can and has grown to support those transitions, create new opportunities. The challenge isn't stopping AI.
It's navigating the transition wisely, equitably.
And history gives us powerful reasons for optimism. AI plus human creativity could drive unprecedented growth, prosperity, better quality of life.
Both in India and globally, yes, that's a potential.
So as you reflect on this deep dive into the sources, maybe consider what this historical perspective means for how you personally think about AI in the future of work.
It's complex to manage. Reskilling, education, policy are vital, but unlocking those positive outcomes requires that effort.
It's about seeing the future isn't set in stone. It's shaped by how we understand and use these powerful tools.
Absolutely.
There's definitely a lot to think about there. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the history of tech change and what it might tell us about the AI revolution.
And thank you for exploring these sources with us.
We'll see you next time for another deep dive.